Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Ilya Rude, and today I'd like to talk about Entra ID. Every vendor has a kind of anchor technology that pulls everything else along. In the case of Microsoft, that technology has long been Active Directory. No matter what you were working with, Exchange Server, Skype for Business, SharePoint, System Center Configuration Manager, you had to at least understand how Active Directory works. As Microsoft moved to the cloud, that anchor technology changed. Now, it's Entra ID. And I'd like to answer some of the most common questions about Entra ID. The first thing to notice is naming. Entra ID is a relatively new term that appeared after Microsoft renamed their product. Originally, there was on-prem Active Directory. Then it was renamed to Active Directory Domain Services. Later came Azure Active Directory. This caused a lot of confusion. Then Microsoft rebranded again, confusing everyone even more. What was once called Azure Active Directory is now called Entra ID. So all the terms and licenses changed. For example, what used to be Azure Active Directory Premium 1 is now Microsoft Entra ID P1. The first thing you need to understand is that Entra ID and Azure Active Directory are the same thing. Azure AD is the old name, Entra ID is the new one. A common question is whether Entra ID is just the same as traditional Active Directory, only in the cloud. If we answer correctly, the answer is no. Why? Because Entra ID has nothing in common with classic Active Directory. There's no Kerberos, no LDAP, no Jet database engine, no organizational units, no group policies, no domain admins, no domain controllers. I could go on and on. These are completely different technologies. It's like comparing a car and a helicopter. Both are used to move your body from one place to another, but that's where the similarities end. So no, Entra ID is a completely new directory service with a new engine, new protocols, and aimed at different products. But here's a nuance. There's a cloud product called Microsoft 365, and if you don't read the documentation carefully, it might seem like Microsoft 365 works directly with Entra ID. Well, not quite. Office 365 workloads like Exchange Online and SharePoint Online, not sure about Teams, but definitely these two, were originally based on on-prem products, and they were deployed in separate Active Directory forests. That means Exchange Online has its own traditional Active Directory forest, and it syncs with Entra ID. So the takeaway is, Entra ID is a different technology, but some Microsoft 365 services still rely on classic AD behind the scenes. You can't see that AD. It's hidden from you, but it exists. And Microsoft documents always say, Office 365 works with Entra ID. Want to see something funny? Then you connect to Exchange Online and look up the same user, and you'll see a completely different GUID. But in Exchange Online, the user has an attribute called External Directory Object ID. That's the link back to the Entra ID unique identifier. If Microsoft openly explained how everything really works, that would be great. But for now, we have to piece it together ourselves. So we answered the first question. Let's move on. Next question. How do we manage Entra ID? Since there are no domain controllers and no RDP access, you have to connect to a cloud service. You can use the web UI. Microsoft provides a dedicated Microsoft Entra Admin Center and also the Azure portal. Or you can use Microsoft Graph with PowerShell modules, like I just did a minute ago. You can also use older modules built for Azure AD, but those are being deprecated fast. To be honest, I really don't like the new Entra portal. I do most of my work in portal.azure.com. I open Microsoft Entra ID, try to manage something, get an error because I'm logged in with a regular account, switch to an admin account, and then everything works. From there, I go to manage and control users, devices, applications, everything I need. So your only options are PowerShell or the web interface. Another question people ask, especially those unfamiliar with Entra ID, is whether they can simply replace their Active Directory domain services with Entra ID. Something like, let's get rid of all our domain controllers and use Entra ID instead. That won't work. Entra ID was specifically created because traditional Active Directory doesn't work with cloud services. You can't use Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Teams, or OneDrive with only your on-prem Active Directory. There's no way to integrate your on-prem AD so that users authenticate there and access files in OneDrive, for example. Entra ID doesn't work with on-prem products like 1C or other legacy software, unless they're specifically integrated. And cloud products don't work with on-prem AD. Like that old joke, the bank doesn't sell sunflower seeds, and I don't lend money. Same here. Cloud services need Entra ID. On-prem services need Active Directory. In most cases, companies don't fully switch to one or the other. Hybrid environments are the norm. So, does that mean users will have two accounts? No. You can sync users from your on-prem AD into Entra ID. Then the user has the same account and attributes on both sides. The user logs into Entra ID with synced credentials and continues to use the on-prem account as well. Another question. If we're syncing users, does that mean their passwords are now in the cloud? No. Microsoft offers several ways to integrate. The most common is password hash sync.
This syncs a hash of the password hash, so not the password itself. This hash of a hash allows Entra ID to authenticate users, even if the on-prem connection is down. For the paranoid, there are other options like pass-through authentication or ADFS, but honestly, I don't get it. You trust Microsoft with your files, emails, and databases, but not a hash of a password? Another joke comes to mind. Either wear the cross or the underwear. This isn't about protecting from Big Brother. If Big Brother wants access, your authentication method won't stop him. Sure, you can use encryption keys, but no one does that in practice. Next realization. Anyone can try to connect to Entra ID. Back in the day, domain controllers were inside your network. If an attacker wanted in, they had to breach your perimeter. Now, Entra ID is available publicly. If someone knows your UPN, usually your email address, they can start brute forcing your Entra ID account. If your password is 12345, they'll get in fast. What should you do? Microsoft has shouted this from the rooftops. Use multi-factor authentication. It's included in every Microsoft 365 license. If you use Entra ID and don't use MFA, that's on you. But MFA isn't perfect. Phishing attacks can bypass it. That's why you need conditional access policies. These add another layer, not just a password and second factor, but also conditions like trusted device, country, IP range, etc. You can say, allow access from Russia, but block it from the USA. Just a joke, but you get the idea. You have tools to protect your identities. If you don't use them, you're handing your data to attackers. Now what about computers? Before, we could join them to a domain, authenticate users, and control them with group policies. That's still possible, but in a new way. Now there are three options: device registration, Entra ID Join, and hybrid Entra ID Join. Device registration is for personal devices, BYOD. You register them in Entra ID and can restrict access only to registered devices. This works not just on Windows, but also on Mac OS, Android, iOS. Corporate devices use Entra ID Join or hybrid join. Entra ID Join means the device is joined directly to Entra ID, like joining a domain in the cloud. The user logs into the device with their Entra ID account, and you can manage the device. Hybrid join means the device is joined both to on-prem AD and to Entra ID.
The user logs in with the local domain account. The device exists in both directories. You can see this on my computer. I open CMD, type "Who am I?" and see my UPN from Entra ID, not my device name. That's because my device is joined to Entra ID. I log in with my cloud account, using MFA, Windows Hello, etc. You can manually join devices. Open Access Work or School, click Connect. There you'll see options to join a domain or Entra ID or to register the device. Next logical question, where are my group policies? We joined the device to Entra ID, but how do we manage it? There are no OUs or GPOs in Entra ID. Here's where Intune comes in. Intune is Microsoft's MDM solution, included in many Microsoft 365 plans, Business Premium, E3, E5, etc. With Intune, you manage all types of devices: Windows, macOS, Android, iOS, Linux. You go to Intune, Devices, choose the platform, go to Configuration, and create policies. You can configure accounts, admin templates, and much more. If you're used to GPOs and know every registry path, forget it. You'll have to learn a new way. Some GPOs don't yet have equivalents in Intune, but Microsoft is working on it. You might say, fine, I'll just deploy a domain controller in the cloud. Sure, you can spin up a VM in Azure or AWS, create network connectivity and run a DC. But it won't help. You still can't integrate cloud services with on-prem AD, even if the DC is hosted in the cloud. Is there a workaround? Yes. It's called Azure Domain Services, now Entra Domain Services. It's a domain controller as a service. You don't manage the VM. It's managed for you. It syncs from Entra ID. You can join VMs to it, use group policies, create OUs, etc. Think of it as syncing in reverse. Entra ID data is pushed into this managed AD service. You can then use legacy apps and tools like GPMC to manage policies, just like on-prem. Now about licensing. Entra ID has its own licenses, but most people don't buy them separately. They're included in Microsoft 365. You can use Entra ID for free with a tenant, but the key tiers are Entra ID P1 and P2. P2 includes advanced features like identity protection and privileged identity management, and comes with E5. P1 is included in Business Premium and cheaper plans. You can check your license level in the Entra portal. Mine shows Entra ID P1 because I use Microsoft 365 Business Premium. If I buy a single E5 license and assign it to just one user, my tenant gets access to P2 features globally. Microsoft hasn't yet implemented tenant-wide enforcement by user scope. This is essentially a loophole. Microsoft likely considers it license abuse. Next, how do we delegate access? In classic AD, you had predefined groups, domain admins, exchange admins, etc. You added users to a group or delegated access at the OU level.
That doesn't work in Entra ID. There's a role-based model. You go into roles, assign built-in roles, or create custom ones. The most powerful role is Global Administrator. You can also scope roles using administrative units to limit control to certain users or groups. However, other products like Exchange, Intune, Teams have their own RBAC systems, so delegation gets complicated. Final question. What about your applications? If your app is old and doesn't support modern protocols, it'll have to stay with on-prem AD. But modern apps, like Jira, Dropbox, can integrate with Entra ID using OAuth or SAML. You register the app in Entra ID, get a client ID and secret, then go to your app's admin settings and configure the integration. Then users can log in with Microsoft credentials. Entra ID handles MFA and Conditional Access, then gives a token to the app. This works with any app that supports OAuth or SAML. Earlier, we talked about device management via Intune.
Can Intune replace SCCM? I'm not an SCCM expert, but here's the deal. Intune can deploy apps, manage updates, configure settings, but it doesn't deploy the OS. That's where Windows Autopilot comes in. You buy laptops with pre-installed Windows. Vendors upload info to Intune. When the device boots, it connects to Wi-Fi, identifies your tenant, and configures itself automatically. Same with Android, iOS, macOS, with help from Apple Business Manager. So, new device setup is streamlined. You can even use SCCM and Intune together via co-management. Divide the workload. But the future is clearly moving toward Intune only. I hope you enjoyed this video and now understand Entra ID a bit better. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.